What's up guys, Saf here on Super Saf TV and welcome to the Super Saf style camera comparison between the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. As always, we'll be testing out all aspects of the cameras. There will be chapters down below. Let's get to it.
Now, as always, we're going to start off with photos from the primary cameras. And after taking hundreds of images, both take excellent photos with lots of detail, great dynamic range. Now, as always, we do find that Samsung does opt for more vibrant, more contrasty images, whereas the iPhone generally goes for a more flat and a more neutral look. However, the iPhone does have the next generation of photographic styles, which I absolutely love. And this really allows you to dial in the look that you want. So if you did want something that's more vibrant, you can do that quite easily. And you can also do this after the fact. Now, we've got high resolution cameras on both devices, 48 megapixels on the iPhone, 200 megapixels on the Samsung. But by default, the Samsung shoots at 12 megapixels, and by default, the iPhone shoots at 24 megapixels when you've got good lighting, and that's from all three cameras. So, by default, we do get more resolution on the iPhone versus the Samsung, but you can easily switch to 50 megapixels on the Samsung to match the 48 on the iPhone. And you can see here that we do have lots of detail. The Samsung does appear to be sharper, and Samsung does apply some post-sharpening to their images, which in this instance does look good. And you can, of course, go all the way up to 200 megapixels, and that's going to give you a lot more detail compared to what you're going to get on the iPhone. Now, low light images from the primary cameras both do very well generally, but I did find that the iPhone is sharper compared to the Samsung in low light. You can really see that in examples here and here. And also, I found that the iPhone does balance light better compared to the Samsung. Here you can see that although it's a dark environment, there is some light coming from the lamp, and the Samsung seems to have really brightened things up and overexposed it, whereas you've got much more of a balanced shot on the iPhone. Now, in this example, I think both are doing good, but the iPhone does have a cleaner image. And if we do go in 200%, you can see some of that over sharpening that you've got on bricks on the Samsung, whereas you have a cleaner result on the iPhone. And indoors, in extreme low light, once again, the iPhone with a cleaner image, whereas you do have lots of noise on the Samsung.
Whoa.
Oh, here you are again.
Hey, Small Saf here, just reminding you that we are working on a detailed comparison, Super Saf style, of the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. If you want to see that first, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon. I can go myself.
Okay.
You don't have to click me this
You
time.
heard the little guide. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Now, ultra-wide cameras. Once again, both have excellent ultra-wide cameras, lots of detail, and you can shoot at up to 48 megapixels or 50 megapixels from the ultra-wide cameras. Now, when we do go in 100%, the Samsung is definitely sharper compared to the iPhone. I do think this is some of that post-sharpening that Samsung has. If you look at those lines, they do have some of those signs of post-sharpening, but generally the images do look sharper, which I like. We can also shoot macro images from the ultra-wide cameras of both devices, and these look absolutely stunning. You can focus in closer with the iPhone compared to that of the Samsung, as you can see here. And some of that post-sharpening that I mentioned on Samsung actually really looks good here on macro shots especially. Now, for low light shots with the ultra-wide cameras, both generally tend to do good, but the Samsung I found is consistently sharper. And you can really notice that in particular in this image, where the iPhone has really struggled to keep things sharp, whereas the Samsung is much cleaner. So for the ultra-wide camera overall, I do prefer the Samsung. Now, one thing that I do have to mention, when it comes to low light photography, the iPhone is much easier to shoot compared to the Samsung. The iPhone really brightens things up on screen, so it makes it much easier to compose your shot. Whereas this can be very difficult on the Samsung because sometimes the screen is just completely black and you're shooting blind. Now let's look at the telephoto cameras. So we have a brand new telephoto camera on the iPhone, which gives you 4 times optical zoom, but the Samsung has 2 optical zoom cameras, 3 times as well as 5 times. Now, both devices can shoot at 2 times, giving you optical quality. This just goes into the middle part of the sensor, and both do very well. But when we shoot at 3 times optical zoom, then you will get cleaner shots on the Samsung. You can really see this when we go in 200%. If you look at myself and also the text, it's cleaner on the Samsung because we're using the optical zoom camera versus what is essentially digital zoom on the iPhone from the primary camera. But when we go to 4 times zoom, this is when the optical zoom camera of the iPhone kicks in. So you're gonna get a cleaner result there. The Samsung between 3 to 5 times will still be using the 3 times optical zoom camera. So there is a bit of digital zoom involved here. So that means you're not gonna get as clean results between around 4 to 4.9 times on the Samsung compared to the iPhone. Now, when we go to 5x zoom, then the Samsung's optical zoom camera kicks in. And we're still using the optical zoom camera on the iPhone, which can give you optical zoom quality all the way up to 8 times. And you can see here that both are doing an excellent job. There is a slight difference in focal length because although both are 8 times, they do have different focal lengths for that 8 times of what they perceive. But regardless, even at 10 times, I do think both are doing a very good job overall. If you look at the quality and the sharpness, both are excellent. Now, what about extended zoom? Now, extended zoom is an area where Samsung has a lot of experience, and this really shows because looking at this example at 20 times zoom, the Samsung is much cleaner and you can actually read the text that I'm holding up, whereas you can't on the iPhone. The iPhone can also now extend all the way up to 40 times zoom, but once again, the Samsung just giving you a better result. I can clearly read the text here, whereas I can't on the iPhone. And this is something that I consistently found with lots of tests. At 40 times zoom, the Samsung just better and cleaner compared to the iPhone. The Samsung can go up to 100 times. This is not something that I would really recommend using all the time, but hey, the option is there. And results can vary depending on what you're shooting. If you're shooting the moon, then you're gonna get cleaner results. There's not really been a full moon recently, so I've not been able to test that. So that's in good light. What about in low light? Because the iPhone telephoto camera now has a larger sensor. So when we do go on to the respective optical zooms, then the iPhone is actually giving a much cleaner result. Even if we extend this all the way to around 20 times, then once again, the iPhone, you can actually read the text here. The Samsung is really struggling. So although for extended zoom, you're gonna get better results on the Samsung in good light, when it comes to low light, the telephoto camera is gonna give you better results on the iPhone. Now let's look at one of my favorite areas, and that is portraits. We'll start off with the primary cameras. I think both are doing an excellent job. I do prefer the colors on the Samsung because the blacks are much more accurate. Once again, you can tweak this on the iPhone with photographic styles if you'd like. Now, the iPhone does have an advantage where it takes portraits at 24 megapixels, and that is from the primary as well as the telephoto camera. On the Samsung, however, we've got 12 megapixels, so you are going to get more resolution on the iPhone for portraits compared to the Samsung. Both devices also let you take portraits around 2 times, and both do very well. Once again, I do prefer the colors on the Samsung here. Now, when we get to 3 times, this is where the optical zoom camera of the Samsung kicks in, and you're gonna get sharper results compared to the iPhone. So if we do go in 200% into both images, you can see at 3 times, you're gonna get a sharper and cleaner result on the Samsung compared to the iPhone. But when you go to 4 times, then because the optical zoom camera of the iPhone kicks in, you're gonna get a cleaner result on the iPhone. You can see this more clearly when we go in 100%. However, I just have to say, when it comes to edges, both are amazing. Look at the wisp of my hair at the top. That is very impressive that both of these devices have done an amazing job. Now, my favorite for portraits is around 4 to 5 times, and here you can see that both are doing an amazing job. Dynamic range slightly better on the iPhone. You can see the shiny forehead that I have. The Samsung has struggled a little bit, whereas the iPhone has done a better job. But generally speaking, both doing excellent for portraits. Once again, those little white wisps of my hair have been detected on both devices. Very impressive portraits on both devices. Now, selfies. So we actually have a brand new camera system for the selfies on the iPhone. This is an 18 megapixel center stage camera, which for the first time that I've seen, lets you take both portrait and landscape images without having to rotate your phone, and this is amazing. The first thing it gives you is very wide angle selfies. So you can see here that we can get way wider on the iPhone versus the Samsung. I also provide the colors here on the iPhone. The new camera also has amazing dynamic range. Here you can see we've got lots of light coming in for the background, but the iPhone has balanced that so well, whereas the Samsung is struggling. Portraits from the selfie cameras, once again, both do a great job. Again, those wisps of my hair. I'm honestly one of the best candidates to test portraits on because of my gray hair. It always struggles with the background, but both of them are doing amazing. Now with the iPhone, when you take portraits from the selfie camera, it actually gives you more of a cropped in look, but you can always just take a regular photo and then turn it into a portrait later on. And again, it does an amazing job. Low light selfies, I did prefer the iPhone. As you can see here, you've got a wider shot and it's cleaner compared to the Samsung. But when using the low light flash, I did prefer the Samsung because I found that it gave you a sharper result. Now, low light selfies can be tricky because you're holding the camera so close to you, and any sort of little shakes in your hand will result in a blurry image. But here I do prefer the Samsung. Now, before we move on to videos, I want to talk about some of the editing features that we have on both devices. Now, you heard me mention photographic styles. I love these on the iPhone, especially the fact that you can apply these after you've taken the images. There's nothing really to the same level that we have here on the Samsung, but we have much better AI features when it comes to editing on the Samsung compared to the iPhone. So we do have cleanup on the iPhone, which can work reasonably well in simple situations like removing this lamppost. But as soon as things get a little bit more complicated, the iPhone really struggles, whereas the Samsung is absolutely amazing. Just look at how it's completely reconstructed this. It can literally reconstruct half your face if you have it covered. And you also have sketch to image. So if you want to draw a cat into one of your photos, you're going to be able to easily do that on the Samsung, whereas you can't do anything similar to this on the iPhone. Now, what about video? Well, you'll be pleased to know that both of these devices take excellent quality video. You can see some examples here. Even with HDR video, both do an amazing job. For low light situations where it is very tricky to shoot, I did find that the iPhone gave sharper and cleaner results. But the Samsung does have the ability to shoot 8K video, so you can get lots more detail on the Samsung when shooting video compared to the iPhone. And now this also works on 3 of Samsung's cameras, the telephoto, the primary, as well as the ultra-wide camera. However, when shooting video in low light with the ultra-wide camera, I did prefer the iPhone. The Samsung does have a lot of jitters when you are walking with the ultra-wide camera in lower light. The iPhone does have some of this, but not to the extent that the Samsung has. And using the optical zoom cameras of both devices 4 times versus 5 times, I found that the Samsung was sharper, but the iPhone does balance light better. You can see here that the Samsung has overexposed this area where we've got light coming, whereas the iPhone has balanced that much better. So overall, for low light video, I did prefer the iPhone. Now, from the front-facing cameras, the iPhone, once again, wider, but consistently, I also found that it had better dynamic range compared to the Samsung. And because of that new center stage camera and that square sensor that we've got on the iPhone, it means that stabilization is also much better. Look at this example. I'm so impressed with how stable the footage is on the iPhone. Look at the background. Things are super, super smooth. And it's not that the Samsung is doing a bad job. The iPhone is just better with stabilization. Now, this also continued onto the rear-facing cameras. So shooting at 4K on both cameras, I did find that the iPhone was more stable. But we do have the action mode and super steady on the Samsung. And applying this, it does initially use the ultra-wide camera. The Samsung, I found, does struggle to focus when you're using super steady, as you can see here. And when we do use the stabilization modes on both devices at 1x, once again, the iPhone is more stable. Now, cinematic video, you saw the intro at the start, and honestly speaking, I think both were close. Neither of them were perfect. They were both struggling in certain situations. However, cinematic mode from the selfie cameras, I did find once again that the iPhone had better dynamic range. Now, the iPhone also has the ability to edit the blur and the point of focus in cinematic videos after the fact. This is something that you don't have on the Samsung. Touching on some of the pro video features on both devices, both can now shoot in log. This is a flat picture profile, which will allow you lots more flexibility in editing after the fact. But one thing that I did like on the Samsung when shooting log is that you can simply swipe up on a log video and it's gonna give you a color correction option. This is gonna use Samsung's default color correction. So if you are in a bit of a hurry and you really just wanna get out something quickly, you're gonna be able to do that quickly on the Samsung. The S25 Ultra also has Pro Video, which is gonna allow you to control things like your ISO, your white balance, all from within the camera app. You're not gonna need an external app for this. With the iPhone, you can do that with a third-party app, but it's not there by default. Both devices also have dual capture, so you can use the front-facing camera at the same time as the rear-facing camera. Both devices also have excellent slow motion, 4K 120 frames a second. You can see me here jumping around like a lunatic. I think both actually do really well. With the Samsung, you do have the option of shooting 4K 120 frames a second from the ultra-wide camera. This is not an option that you have on the iPhone. But the iPhone can shoot slow motion at 2x, whereas you can't do this on the Samsung. Now for audio, well, this was a little bit tricky because we have some new AI features on both devices. On the Samsung, you have audio eraser. On the iPhone, you have audio mix. And once you've shot a video, you can actually go in and choose different options, such as in-frame, studio, and cinematic. Now I tried to find what was the best in this very noisy situation, and have a listen compared to the Samsung.
So now testing the audio mix feature on the iPhone versus the audio eraser on the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. Let me know what you guys think and which one can cancel out the background noise more. There is a lot of sound in the background with all of these cars. So this is going to be a real challenge, but let's see which one comes out on top.
Now you guys can let me know what you think, but overall I did find that the Samsung was cleaner. The iPhone can sound a bit tinny when using some of these modes. Now to conclude, I think both of these have excellent cameras overall. Some of the best that you're going to find out there. And honestly speaking, I wouldn't mind using either of these as my primary cameras on the day-to-day. Of course, you have some advantages and disadvantages. You have a better selfie camera overall on the iPhone, especially with that new center stage functionality. You have photographic styles, which really allow you to dial in the look that you like, even after you've taken your images. Overall, you have better low light performance on the iPhone, especially when it comes to the primary and the telephoto camera. And you also have excellent video with better stabilization overall compared to the S25 Ultra. Now, the S25 Ultra, on the other hand, has that dedicated 3x zoom camera, so it's going to give you more versatility when it comes to portraits. It also has better extended zoom in good light. It has 8K video from 3 cameras now, and it has some of the best editing features that you've got out there. That's what I think anyway. What do you guys think? Definitely drop me a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. As Small Staff mentioned, we are working on a Super Staff style comparison, looking at all of the other aspects between the iPhone 17 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. If you want to see that first, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then do smash that like button for me. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV, and I'll see you next time.